Hi there, Kyle. My hair
Good
looks
morning.
weird. Hope this is not a video.
It's all right. We're going to have a hair-raising time.
Okay, good. What the hell is wrong with my hair? Seriously, sorry for
Yeah,
my
I
thing.
have the same issue. So,
This
um,
is really weird. And you do it backwards, and it's not. Anyway, here I am. Good morning, good afternoon. Where are you calling from? I forgot to look.
I'm in North Carolina in the
North
U.S.
Carolina. Beautiful. One of those Eastern Coast places I haven't been to. So in the US.
And
So
you're in Sweden, right?
I'm in Sweden, married to a Canadian wild woman from Lebanon originally,
Well,
but
good.
wise. Yeah.
And did you grow up in Sweden?
I grew up in Sweden. Yes, I did. I've been moving around quite a lot, 36 places in total. I lived in California for a while and got adopted there by a US family. So I feel I have air roots. So I'm partly Swede, partly American or Californian, I would call myself. And lately I came out as an Italian 5 years ago. So I regard myself as a little Italian more as well.
Did
I'm
you
not a typical Swede.
did I hear you correctly to say that you have lived in 36 places?
No, I moved. Yeah, I moved around 36 places. Yeah, as far as I think, but I realized there probably more actually. So
That's that's quite a bit.
it is. It is. That gives you. My sister asked my dad when we were small, "Where are we? What are our roots?" She said, and he said, "We don't have any roots. We like the orchid. We have air roots." So it sounded beautiful, but it doesn't help being
So this
rootless.
this started as a child. No, this is not just an adult thing.
No, no, no. We moved around a lot. I can't go into that detail. There was a reason why we moved around.
Yeah,
That was
well, I've moved quite
so.
often too, compared to my family and other people that I know, um,
I
and
think it helps us to accept complexity, meeting strangers. I grew
oh,
up in a very poor area with a lot of immigrants. I think my neighbors in the high rise, we lived in the southern part of Malmö for a while. All the people escaped some kind of war or conflict. They were my neighbors. I grew up with them. And I thought when I was young that everybody had it like that. It took me years to realize that was not typical. I was on fugitive myself, I felt. So I have easy connect with all the immigrated people in Sweden and elsewhere and stuff. That pros and cons with everything. You got a beautiful sunset behind you. It's
that's from Wyoming.
Mhm. Nice.
A couple of years ago, I used to live in Wyoming,
Oh, nice.
and yeah, I was in Cody, and I got up early as I usually do, and I was headed to Yellowstone National Park, and you go through a little mountain range. You got tunnels, and you get on the other side of the tunnel, and there's this large reservoir. And this was uh, this was the sky when I came out of the tunnel. So I pulled off and
Wow.
took some pictures,
Good for you. Capture the moment.
capture the moment. Yeah,
Seize the
and
day. Yeah.
it it gets comments all the time, and I'm glad. It's beautiful without being too
Offensive.
or or too present, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, well, everybody can relate to sunset, so that's it's available for all of us. So it's not excluding anyone. So
So, Sven, how do I pronounce your last name?
Hultin, but it's not. It's a hard Hultin. The US people call me Hultin,
But it's
and they
Hutin.
I, and they call me Seven because they can't pronounce Sven. They say Sven, and so I have my nickname in the US is Seven actually.
Seven.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have to learn to accommodate everybody's quirks and idiosyncrasies, don't you?
No, but it gives you both dignity. Like if you don't have common ground, you seek other grounds, right? So if you can pronounce my name and I can't like the way you speak it, call me something else that you can't speak. So it's
See, I looked at it and I thought, this is Finn.
that's good. It's good. Close.
Okay. All right.
Good for you. Yeah,
Well, I'm glad you're with me. I have this little thing you wrote the
Yeah.
other day in front of me.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
And but I don't. I'd like to hear a little bit about who you are and what you've been doing in your life. And
Wow.
I mean, it doesn't
Yes.
have to be exhaustive. I mean,
No, no, no. I can. Who am I? I grew up. I compare myself to Trevor Noah actually a little bit. If you read his biography, we're
yeah,
similar. We grew up with
yeah,
a very frugal upbringing, and my mother was good to put us in different contexts when we grew up. So we saw there was something else than what we had. So we had books, we had art and stuff like that. But our family was kind of a different story. We had a very frugal. And I lived with that. So I grew up in, as I said, complex environment, fragmented people, and so and having nothing, you sort of seek the adventure. So, and my
yeah,
ticket to life has always been to be positive and social. And I was good at school. I didn't study that much, so but I got high grades. So I thank God for that. And I understand math, and I did a lot of things. I always seeking adventure because life is here and now. I always thought that, so yeah, I make things happen for myself. So I was seeking a lot of things. So I done a lot of crazy stuff. So and a lot of education. So and but my career wise, I swore myself to never work with IT or in Stockholm and never go to North Korea or Colombia. So I fulfill those three criteria quite fast. So don't look at what you don't want to do. No, so the financial disaster, financial crash 92, there was no jobs. So I started off as a vacuum cleaner, which my mom hated because she didn't want her son to be a salesperson after 20 years. But I became a salesperson in Stockholm selling IT solutions. So there I was and I followed the whole outsourcing business from start.
you got it
From
out of your
desk.
system, didn't you?
No, no, no. So I ended up in Colombia against my way on the way to a wedding once from Ecuador. I was scared as shit. So now I have to go to North Korea to just make closure. But anyways, I was in the outsourcing business. I want to be an oceanographer in San Diego. That was my thing. But all those offshore people were unemployed by then, so I couldn't get there. But I was close, sliding door. So I was in outsourcing, and I started early on with the complex business, selling things that didn't exist, like outsourcing itself, services in IT industry, desktop outsourcing, infra outsourcing, apps outsourcing, integration outsourcing. I never touched technology at all. I only work with business benefits, value creation, value propositions, organizational questions. So I did as a strategy and change consultant, as a business development / complex deal maker, and later strategic HR. So I was in the receiving end from those major infrastructure outsourcing projects in Sweden and Nordic. So I was a thought leader when it came to what IBM back then called adaptive workforce. And that was early 2001. I'm not going to talk that much more, but then same time, like people like Josh Bersin, David Green, and Dave Snowden, who works with Knafi, they all worked at IBM. Similar projects around that. I was somebody working in the peripheral part of this adaptive workforce that Lou Gerstner tried to create the service industry from. And part of that deal was to move into role-centric organization structure instead of a job-centric. So I was the preacher for this in the Nordic and across Europe, among 10 other people. And that stuck to me because I could combine my strategy and change business and business skills, and my I did an MBA in HR, human capital management, and I was perfectly fit for that as a consultant. I loved it. It's the best job I had. We got 10,000 people in pipeline from 12 different projects over a couple of years, and it was absolutely crazy. And then I left that and continued doing apps outsourcing, a software development outsourcing, a business process outsourcing, but all from the organizational impact. And I said to myself, 2010, I want to be my own. I had enough with IBM and San Parmisano. I hated him, to be honest. He destroyed what Gerstner built up. Yes, you can quote me. And and I thought, I'm going to sell myself on this, what we did in IBM. But there was not enough data out there. So HR had no data about the people. And if they had, it was fragmented. It was crazy. So I can't make money on this. There is nothing. That was 2010. So I stayed working 2 Indian companies and working in a Norwegian company for 5 years. And then I said, now I want to be my own. So fall of 2019, I said, I'm going to be my own. I'm going to start a company April 1st, 2020. And I
Why?
thought it was,
Oh,
yeah.
what a time to do
So,
that.
oh, everything. everything I planned, my whole service portfolio, perfect. It still is perfect compared, very close to what I'm doing today, but I reframe some words and reasons. But pandemic was horrible. Then I had a couple of good years, and the last 2 years have been kind of bad. But there's a huge need for me. I call myself today a complexity practitioner. I work with complex systems in what I call the liminal space between confusion and chaos. So I don't work with what's stable, the institutions. I don't work with what's complicated, or I don't work reactively, like, okay, there's a war, let's do that. Let's just turn out the fire. Let's prevent things. Let's create better. So that's where I am right now. So I have an ecosystem of people I talk with across the world. And happy now to talk to you on this. So I think the world needs somebody like myself.
Your story is similar to mine.
Yeah, I saw that in your profile as well. I mean, we must have a lot of things in common, actually. So
And
even though,
I'm what I'm doing now is an iteration of what I started 40 years ago, but it's never been quite the same from year to year. And
no,
but probably the things that are the most similar would be what I discovered when I started my consulting practice in the mid 90s. And I was seeing these patterns of behavior. I've been working in organizations. I started my career as a minister and and had a very interesting quick trajectory out of parish ministry into academia and then into consulting. But what I discovered was that there were these patterns which were problematic, and one was the lack of a real clarity of thought, and then the lack of respect and trust in relationships within organizations. And then the thing which I found the most curious and what I get the most resistant to is the notion that structure dictates everything. Structure's dictating how everybody functions. And nobody wants to admit to that because it means that they have essentially relinquished their agency to some mechanistic system that has no real concern for it because it doesn't understand that these are human beings. And I and I still think we're caught in that sort of
oh, we definitely are. We're
situation.
having monolithic systems controlling us like they had like 150 years ago, which it probably made sense in the industrialization. But back then, what I read somewhere that back then the capital was fixed and the labor was mobile. People, but
Yeah,
today it's reverted. Now the capital is mobile and the labor is fixed because you can't move around as easily these days. But we
that's
still have the
true.
same system controlling it. And I think somewhere down the line, and I'm not going to go into that, but the economic order for how we run this is kind of not very granular. We only have a few metrics for success, and that's GDP, productivity, profit, and market cap. It's like I think the word is reduced to 4 variables that doesn't reflect the need of or the value of so much other things in the life. So, but we can't solve that in this call. But I think we should be aware of how we finance the solutions going forward. And what makes me sad there is when I go into concepts like economy and money, right now in many countries who have their own currencies, including Sweden and America, of course, we have the strongest currency in the world, and that's never going to default. It's like, oh, when are you going to pay back the bills, right? You're never going to pay back the bill. It's just expanding universe or balance sheet or something like that. So you need to
Right.
let go of that household view of money. But let's not go that down later because I destroy the time for us today. But I think you're perfectly right. We have linear structures to control non-linear challenges. And I think the biggest problem why we have structures controlling people is that we have a steering system that fosters a culture where you have this dissolution of control.
Yeah.
If if our leaders today on government level in Sweden or in our big companies, if they said, I have no clue what's going to happen, right? But we're going to fix this. Whatever's going to happen in the next couple of years, these are the scenarios. This is our bets, right? And that would instill hope, respect, because that's what everybody's feeling, but nobody's admitting it. Because the stock market will go wild if you said, I have no clue what's going on. So Yeah, that's probably why we're there. And I think that's why you and I need to be part to inspire people to think differently, to think that there's a better future that possible if we believe in it. If you only believe in misery, it will be miserable. So it's
I had a similar experience to you going into COVID. Uh, I had returned from Africa in February of 2020, and a week later they declared the pandemic. And the plan, my plan was I was working with a rural economic development company that was at that point it was working in 12 or 14 countries.
Mhm.
And we were talking about how they were going to expand throughout the whole continent over a 10 to 15 year period. And I was going to work with them on that. Be in Africa 3 or 4 months a year and do my leadership stuff with them. And I was very excited about that. And then the COVID came and it all just went away. It just kind of
Yeah.
vanished like smoke in a windstorm. And so I found it very interesting because no one really knew what they were going to do. And
Mhm.
they felt very trapped in a situation that they couldn't actually find a way to accommodate themselves to. And
Mhm.
and I had felt that that was the way things were for at least 10 years, if not longer. But people had enough money to kind of counteract that sense of entrapment. And so I ended up moving. I ended up coming back to where I used to live, and what I began to find out, and this is the kind of the source of doing the podcast was that people wanted to talk more, and they began to see things and believe in things that they had not believed or seen prior, and that there was hopefulness in
Yeah.
their perception of the world,
Yeah.
and and that it didn't surprise me. It just delighted me. Is a better way of saying it.
I agree totally. And I have a dog. So, of course, we were out walking that dog a lot. And during COVID, and we live in a house, and before the pandemic, we never saw kids outside playing on the streets or biking around. But the next generation who grew sort of matured during the pandemic, they were biking around and hanging around like we did when I was a kid. I'm not saying that was better before, but it was nice to see people. And people are outside and you start talking to neighbors. You can't just say hello to them for 500 times. You need to talk to them. But I love that in the COVID because it made me think that people have been asking for give me some time, stop the word for a second so I can breathe. And now the word stopped for 2 years. And I
Yeah.
always ask myself, what did you do with those 2 years? And I'm not going to blame guilt feeling here, people, but many people didn't do anything at all. But many, on the other hand, some people studied, read a lot, reached out a lot, thought a lot, prepared for what comes next. And so I think, in a sense, that pandemic was a blessing in disguise because it was a good rehearsal for the next pandemic that will come sometime. But also in the mindset, the whole generation had now a trauma that they shared equally across the world. Like you and I growing up, the Cold War, and I thought that my father was going to get killed all the time. I heard an airplane, and he was military, so he was never home. And eastern part of Europe was just a black wall. We had no idea what's behind there. The nuke threat was hanging over us. And I'm not saying that's a healthy way of growing up, but that was the way we grew up. That was our reality. So
But it is reality, and
yeah,
therefore you are constantly analyzing it and trying to discern what is the path through that. I mean, this
yeah,
is what I take from your complexity stuff is that we're faced with this increasingly complex world, and I know people who believe the complexity is okay. I mean, it's fine, and but is there a point of when it begins to I don't know what's the right word become problematic beyond what is reasonable, and that we have to. perish the thought, simplify.
Yeah, and that's the point. You can't simplify it. You can't simplify what's complex. That's as per definition, because you don't know what's going to happen. You can decomplexify it by talking about it. It's like, let's say you wake up in Jurassic Park one day. It's like, what the hell? And you haven't studied in school. You don't know what kind of animals are coming there. Are they eat it? Are they going to eat me? Or how do they, And then you learn. You probe. Like Columbus sailing across from
Yeah.
Portugal to how do they convince the people to join the ships, right? How long are we going to be on this boat? I don't know. And just mature the stupid curiosity. Are we going to get there? And how do they prepare the strategic foresight we call it when we come to the moon? How are we going to move around there? That's a good part. You go into another sense. And I realize many people don't think like that. And I'm not saying that I'm better than other, but that was so boring where I grew up because all the immigrant kids my age, they were not allowed to go out after 5 o'clock because their parents had escaped war or conflict or harassment from South America and stuff. So they were afraid the kids could get kidnapped. The father was sitting crying in the kitchen, unemployed, and the mother was a cleaning lady, and and I was out there, one of the few Swedish people playing with whom? None. So you have to be a kid and be curious and play war with yourself. And nobody, we played war, but then all the immigrants' kids, they were not allowed to play war, which I understand. And if you yeah, and that is so. What's complex for me at an early stage? Can I walk that way, or do I get beaten up that way, or are they going to mug me? That if you're street smart or not street smart, that is being aware. Try to understand, read body language. It's like a jungle. But if you're not trained in that, thank God, why should we be trained in that? That's horrible. But if you're not trained in that, you need to be retrained in that because we have it in our instinct. We are all survivors after thousands, 100,000 years of evolution, where your instinct and your way to read people and anticipate the next movement is hidden there. And I think that's fascinating. And I anticipated the future of AI to sort of eradicate all the people. So I said to myself already 2010, that, okay, the future of work, what does that mean? Whatever it means, I need to be a little bit more human. I need to focus on something that makes me uniquely human. Since then, I've been studying that subject.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, and that is the exploration I do in people, in myself, in as many dimensions as possible. And one of the best things I do today, I'm a volunteer as a suicide hotline every second week. And I take the most troublesome passes because I think I will not classify. Everybody has a reason to call in. It's anonymous. We can't really help people, but you help them by being a human being there, right? Share the moments.
Right.
It gives an insight in the world how much issues there are for people, self-perceived issues. It makes me think some of these people I talk to, and I don't judge them, but they don't have awareness of their own strengths. And they have no awareness about the system they're in, that they know the threats or whatever problems, but there is a need for us to understand our relationship to others at work, in society, because otherwise you can't influence it. So
How
I
is
think
it that people can, grow up in a family, go to school, um, get a job, and still not be aware of who they are, what their talent is, what their gifts are, what their agency. How did our society become like that?
it's very good thinking, and I think it depends on what country you ask that question. I had a call with Kenya 2 weeks ago and about the project to create the movement there. I was so inspired, I was almost crying actually, and I said, "What am I doing in this call? Uh,
Yeah.
whatever you do, don't do what the Western world has done." But I think the respect for elders is one of these things.
Yeah.
In Sweden, the state we were saved from the Second World War. It was not the sweetest thing. We were lucky. We were not bombed, so we had everything infrastructure. So it was a good country. It had a good system and one of the longest standing nations in the world. I mean, whereas all as Habsburg, like 1,000 years monarchy in Sweden, and compared to America, 250 next year. So it's like 750 more years as one institution. It's quite long.
Right.
And we take that institution for granted. the foundation for the COVID research that we had, that was actually established in the 1600s, 1700s, 1634 or something like that. So because the Swedish king was always out of the war back then, so the country need to run without him. So the institutions in Sweden has quite a lot of power. But if they're questioned and they're torn down, it's going to take hundreds of years to build them up again. So we take a lot of things for easy here. So we're very privileged to live in this country for many reasons. But that doesn't mean that you can't destroy those institutions. And if you have now people, now come back to your question. If you live in that world and the people coming, escaping war, destruction and chaos, and come to us, and they never experienced peace before like that, and we here have only experienced peace. We don't know what trauma is, to be honest. Let me be very. I think that's the biggest problem, and we have no connections with our grandparents because we were divorced in the 60s. And today we have ageism, and we have young people who read less books today. I guess they can't reason. They have no history. And the thing that touched me so with Africa, coming back to that, when they approached this question is, they said something like this: "Our future is steeped in our history," she said. And I just, and we don't talk history here. It's almost forbidden to talk about what happened during the last century. There's nobody talking about what Sweden did during the Second World War. It's just a big, big no-no. It's
Well,
it's
we have
it's
a lot of
crazy.
we have some of that here in the
Yeah,
US.
but we have that everything where you have some developed institution, and the whole game is that I do this, I work in this factory, but then you need to fix that, right? But whereas you have a smaller community, like a farmer out in the rural areas, they're all codependent. I don't need anyone here. I
Yeah.
lock my door and even talk to my neighbors. And I think that is what we need to change. We need to talk more. Like you and I. Now we talk. And sorry for a long, exhaustive answer on your question.
No,
Uh,
it touches on what I see, which is um, we've kind of become very present oriented, and only what I'm going to do today matters, and what I did
mm,
yesterday I've forgotten about, and what I'm going to do tomorrow it doesn't matter. It's this, and it becomes very much trapped in my phone.
yeah,
That's where our captured is. And I'm not saying the phone is actually all that bad. It's not 100% bad. It's how we use it, but that's not really the issue here. I do think it's my experience with Africa is that when I was there, I did 2 trips to Africa before the COVID happened, and I was treated in what in Kenya they call an mzee, who is
mm,
an elder, and I had never been treated that way before.
mm,
And I met many of these Africans at a conference in Thailand, and um, they walked into the building, into this lobby of this hotel for this conference they were attending, and they surrounded me and they enveloped me into their little community. And I had never experienced anything like that,
no,
because in the West we're very independent,
yeah,
but at the same time not very self-sufficient. And so one of the things that resulted from that encounter with them was to go to Africa and do some leadership training. And on one of those, on the second trip, I was taken out to this farm out in Western Kenya, and there was a group of about 40 women who were probably in a radius of 5 miles, 7 or 8 miles of this farm, and they would come 3 times a week to be trained. And the training began with them learning how to raise chickens, and then it would become gardening, vegetable growing, and animal husbandry and horticulture, and they were being taught how to do this. And they invited these women to make an extra trip this week. This is on a Saturday to come meet me, and how um, honoring it is for me to see a group of people who are leaving their homes and going to walk 5 miles to come meet me.
yeah,
And so I recorded my interview. I interviewed some of them, and I recorded this, and it's the first episode of the podcast. And what I learned from them was how important it was for them to be self-sufficient and interdependent.
Yeah.
And 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 I asked, well, why is this important? They said, well, what we have learned is that if you're not self-sufficient and you're not interdependent, then you're going to find crime entering into your families. And
Interesting.
if you don't want crime there, you must do the things which make you self-sufficient. And it was an incredible experience because I felt like I was watching um, these women tell me the antidote to what was going on wrong here in the U.S. and that you know, and I wherever that begins in terms of where did that notion of independence without self-sufficiency and interdependence, where did it come from? And I I have thoughts about that, but that's I think that's where a lot of the stuff that we're talking about actually has a kind of an inflection point of when you decide you're going to be more in control of your life, then you're going to have to do things like, well, I'm going to have to stop doing certain things that um, make it difficult for me to be self-sufficient. You know, I'm
Yeah.
going to stop spending money in a certain way. I'm going to stop, um, you know, spending my time in places which is not productive. I'm going to spend more time in self-development. I'm going to spend more time in meeting
Yeah.
people and building relationships where we can
Yeah.
support our community.
And, and that is, there's two things there that you bring up that first I want to reflect on you said about this wisdom from the elder people and things
Yeah.
like that. I remember my mother, my grandma, she grew up in two world wars and, yeah, long story, but and since we didn't have a daily newspaper in my place, when I saw her, I always read her newspaper, and her family had been subscribing to that like from 1905 or something like that. So she got it for free, right? Until she died. Same thing. She was traveling free from the railway because her father was working at a railway station. Those benefits do not exist anymore. But I read that paper like because I was, page by I read everything, not the obituaries, but everything else. And then I checked her because it was good Swedish and it was a good story, and I read a lot, and I was so glad to read it. Proper hemp, I felt rich, and I looked at her. She never read anything, right? So she just read the comics, and there was some little short story, the Swedish equivalent to Mark Twain, and it drove me crazy. And we were at the summer house, her summer house, and she was sitting, a beautiful picture. She was sitting in the sunshine in the corner and doing things, and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I said, "My grandma," I said, "I don't understand. What? We have this magazine here, the daily magazine. You never read it. What do you mean? You only read the comics," she said. "Oh," she said, she put away her hand, the toiling kit. So, you know what? I already read, she was swearing a lot. I already read all the news. What do you mean? When you always me, I went through world wars, all these things, the nuclear war, blah, 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 all those disasters. It's just new men, the same problems, just new men dicking around, she said. And so you don't worry about it, she said. Don't worry, skip those pages. It's going to be the same when you grow old. And I'm older myself, right? And I have the same opinion. It's like, it's just the same. And well, I don't as foul much as she has. But it was nice for me to know that growing up in the Cold War with nuclear threat over my head, because I actually had fear. I live in the south of Sweden. It was very imminent that the Russians would invade them. And but what was natural for me. And you're a kid, you should play. So I played. And my daughters, they said to me, when the war came and all those disasters come, so, am I supposed to be worried now? Well, you can be worried, but you don't have to. There are people are worried all the time here, so they pay to be worried, so you can go to school. Go to school, don't worry. This is normal. This is just new men dicking around, right? and but many people do not have those older people who can say that to them. So that comes back to my self-awareness. I'm a kid. My job is this. And you are no, I'm the dad, and it's like I'm the one taking care of the country, so I can be a kid, and whatever that system is. And if something happens, he's going to rescue me. We escape or something. But all the young kids coming here from many countries of Sweden now, they're not even allowed to meet Swedish kids, not because they don't want to, but because it's impractical. They live too far away. So it's totally impossible to integrate them. And the smart kids, they can't practice Swedish with anyone, and the parents don't speak Swedish, and because they don't, many of them want to, but they can't afford it because they need to work. So there's very little compassion, I think, in my country about people who has it hard. And seeing the people who really has it hard, it doesn't cost that much to help them, to be honest. If I listen to the suicide people, some of them I talk to, they need like $5 to survive till Wednesday when they get the next Social Security check. Their problem is cash flow over time. So that would change their life dramatically over the weekend because they have nothing to eat, nothing to drink. They have to be starving for 5 days until they get the new money. If they could just get a little bit more. And I go, give me your phone money, I can swish you, right? And I'm not allowed to. So I can't be part of practical of the solution. And that breaks my heart when I sit in there and you hear the lack of medicine because, one of the biggest problems in Sweden right now is medical. We saw that during Corona. We closed down our medical production here. It's going to take us 14 years to build up our own factories. So we were standing last in line for all the vaccines. So and that's going to happen probably not in my lifetime. But the little medicine we have is criminalized. So some people send away that medicine on the street. So there's not enough medicine for other people. That's called inventory management. And of course, that's something you should use AI for to detect the criminals. Do you think we use that user case for AI in Sweden? No. We don't solve real problems with AI, and that drives me crazy right now. And that's because the problems we have out here, when it comes to complexity in society and globally, including the climate, they have no clear owner. And if there's no clear owner, there's no budget, right? So if there's garbage outside your mailbox, not my garbage, so I prefer leaving it there by my post box, right? Instead of picking it up. It's not my job. I pay taxes. So it stays there for weeks until I take it up angry. Instead of, okay, I might as well take it up. I'm walking the dog. But people are not like that. It's not my problem. So they say to me, why should I solve this? Because you have the data. I need your data. You don't just give me the data with consent and I can solve a solution for these guys over there. Or how much is that worth? Oh, X. Okay, then I want 50% of X. And they haven't done anything. They just open up the door. So, and that drives me crazy. So these are the type of questions I have. I collect these complex challenges, and the common denominator is no owner, politically or business-wise or anything, and no budget. And the value of solving them is taking away a consequence cost. But that consequence cost is hidden in a general cost in the reserve profit and loss statement. So they can't monetize on their own improvements. So nothing happens. So, and you can apply that thinking to almost everything in complexity, actually. Sorry, that was a long answer or a statement.
No, you're I think you're spot on in what you're saying. I see it as there are a lot of people who have been placed in positions of authority, and there's no accountability for them, and so they will do whatever they want to do. And I mean, I gave a speech when I was in Nairobi back in 2020, and at the end of the speech, it was typical my leadership speech, and one of the business leaders at this event asked me, "So what do we do about corruption?" And I didn't have an answer for him because I really hadn't thought much about it, and the more I thought about it, I realized that it was a break between people who are in authority actually having no accountability to the people that they serve.
Yeah.
And that could be viewed as a structural problem, but I see it much more as a moral problem.
I think it's a moral problem. I agree.
And because these people who are in charge, they're alone in their positions.
Yeah.
Well paid, but alone. And they don't know what we know. And those of us who are in the middle and at the very lowest echelons, we see things that no one else sees. And we have a perception of what's going on that no one else has, particularly people who are in positions of high authority.
And that is I've put that in the concept of the dissolution of control, right?
Right.
There was a guy, a Russian specialist in Sweden, Patrik Oksanen. He writes a lot of one of the best guys who understands the Russian thinking now, since this is an imminent threat for us right now.
Yeah.
And in one of his last books, he read that he quoted another guy from the war and defense and fair or whatever they call it. And he said, we got to the stage right now when it comes to resilience, nobody is prepared. I mean, we have all the stuff. We're super smart people. We have the technology, so we can really defend us. I believe in that. However, we are vulnerable from a cybersecurity perspective, and the criminalization and the hybrid war going on. And we are dependent on every single person in Sweden to take their responsibility. Even in the companies, like if you're in a bank officer, you take ownership, not because of the bank, but because of Sweden. But they don't, because they're too afraid. And then they quote this guy, I love that quote. He says, we are too afraid of the tax auditor than Russia, right? So we'd rather not break that rule, if there could be regarded as rule, than prepare ourselves for increased criminalization. I see that coming back in many situations right now, like the Swedish equivalent to CIA, or you call it, or radio intelligence. I don't know what call it in the US. Not CIA, the radio analyst. They had movies right now. We work 24/7 to make sure you can live in peace. So just relax and live life normal. And wow, that feels good. Right? And I was thinking, if they make that movie, why don't they add a couple of messages, say, we can't do this without your help, and you can help us help you by.
Yeah.
The people are encouraged to take ownership for certain things, and corruption is one, you say, and don't engage in that one. Now, cybersecurity is another one, and cybersecurity has no legislation in Europe, and it hits on many institutions in a small country like Sweden. Like every organization are dependent on the ability to defend Sweden, so they need to follow this legislation, right? But the board of those companies, they're not prepared to enforce that regulation, so they delegate it to IT. So suddenly it's an IT thing, and cybersecurity is not something you do; that's something you are. Either I'm cyber secure or not. It's not that cowboys coming in from IT and fixing things and working day and night to catch whatever they do. So there's a lot of wrong interpretation here. Who's doing good? And back to self-awareness. What's my role in this? I complain a lot, but I don't do anything. And if I can't be a good guy in my own environment where I live, like in my boat club over there where I is, they can't even close the gate. That's one of 4 rules we have in the club. Close the gates. Right, don't do this. And I go, oh, you know who I am? No, I don't know who you are, and I don't care. You're a boat member here, I say. So you need to close the gate as well. And by the way, you need to have a boat if you have a boat spot. Oh, I'm a big, what do you call it, lawyer. I don't care. And if it doesn't work here, how's it going to work on a societal level?
Yeah.
Seriously. And that makes me sad. That also breaks my heart. But I see much hope, though, in Sweden right now among many young people. They're all into, I mean, we need to learn AI. Everybody's doing AI here. So I'm not worried at all about the next generation. They simply don't know why they're working with AI. They need the context. Again, the older people telling them what's going on. And I'm very proud of many of the people from other countries coming here. Some countries are more destroyed than others. I don't dare to mention which, but some of the biggest startups, they come from certain countries where they are more individualistic than teaming guys. So these guys are really reinventing Sweden as well. And also girls in startup scene are big. The problem with this, the whole startup scene, is that during the 50s and 60s, when Sweden was blooming with Atlas Copco, you had all these men primarily, but they were good men. Like they were building society across the world. Ericsson, Atlas Copco, Skanska, all these. And now you don't see them in the press anymore. And you see no one. The politicians are boring as crap to listen to. They're not inspiring. They look miserable, like have a gun to their head all the time. And so you need some role modeling. Let's build a company like a JF Kennedy. Don't ask what the country can do for you. Do what you know. And the people we regard as superheroes, they are these unicorns in Sweden, because we are the most innovative country in the world, or top 4 at least. That's just a couple of people. It's just a few. And they don't even employ many people. And they are very rich, but the money goes somewhere else. So And they're not big employers either. So suddenly we have a lot of small companies who's gonna inspire each other. That's a different ballgame, I think. I don't know.
I, I,
Positive.
I think the things you're describing, many of the things are unsustainable,
Very.
and yet, and yet the influencers, the media influencers,
Yeah.
would like us to think that whatever the situation is today is now kind of inevitable, and this is the way it's going to be. When I think that I think the circumstances of how the world is organized is collapsing. And I use that in a very specific sense, in that it is collapsing because it's become overly complex. And it doesn't, because complexity allows people to know, you can tell me better than I can tell you, but complexity allows you to know how to manage a lot of different things in kind of um, in a synthesis way, that all these things kind of work together and we can move forward, but it's still a complex system, but we understand how it all kind of fits together. And we're
Yeah.
not at that point now. And I see that as being very problematic for people who lead large corporations, lead governments, because they cannot see how they cannot see how their actions are eroding the very power that they have. That's what I'm seeing.
That's ignorance, big time. And in Europe, that is represents 9 out of 10 companies are like that. And I take that number from various reports. And one I would like to highlight is Gallup of all companies.
Yeah.
They wrote this report that Sweden is lagging in AI deployment. And at first I was thinking, why the hell do they write documents like AI roadmaps? It felt like the tech area has bought them because they have this high influence on their thinking. So I read the report and it was a big, oh, Sweden, Europe is lagging. Okay. Because why? Oh, because they don't see any value from it. Okay. Isn't that bad? Is that good? If they don't do it because they don't see any value in it. So why should they do it? Right. But the interesting thing of that report, and it came out in the December last year. No, that was not Gallup. It was Udemy, I think, or Gallup. I had to come back there, Gallup or Udemy. And was that the companies were top centric and they didn't have the capability to collect the real useful user cases for AI because they lacked that discussion and blah blah blah. And I was thinking, okay, forget AI. This is the sole reason why we can't innovate at all.
Yeah.
So this is a functional incapability we have. We are handicapped because these guys who appear, you say, there's no way for them to communicate from below. I think when I run projects, both when I did it in IBM, and we cover thousands and thousands of people, or smaller projects with startups or whatever. I think you need to have what this guy Jeremy Scrivens, who's a big role model for me in Australia. You collect people from various types of grouping to discuss relevant topics, but from many perspectives. And that gives you a better understanding of what's going on here. We can't control it. We can't manage it. But what we can manage is our reaction to what's going on. And right now, the reaction is negative. Not everybody can talk about your president, for instance. Everybody talks about him. It's okay, maybe 10% talk about him, but 100% shouldn't talk about him because there's people paid to think about him. So that takes time from thinking about something positive, like say to the kids, you're a kid, you should do kid things. Grown-ups can talk about politics. And as I studied complexity theory, which actually started with philosophers in the Second World War. John Dennett, big contemporary philosopher in the US. I read his book here. He died a couple of years ago. I was amazed. These philosophers who define what AI was, etc. Where are they now? I mean, they were there creating let's call it a monster, but they're not part of the discussion. It's the owners of the AI companies out there. So, but I think what I'm at is like, since these guys on top has no clue what's really going on down there, but they could, if they asked them what's going on, and they could say, oh, which one of those is most relevant for our strategy? So let's say we have 10 subjects and more important than others. 10 bets. We need to fix this. Maybe. And then engage people in how to approach that. that means you focus your energy on those 10 things instead of what's going on elsewhere that other people are already focusing on. And then you become more positive, you have a meaningful purpose in life, and you do something that's good, that's better, that whatever you put it in practice. And that's called emergence, how we self-organize against something. We are going that way. We're staying out of that stuff, right? But there's no one telling us that. And somewhere down the line, we knew this hundreds of years ago, instinctively. Ants are better to self-align. And blood cells, they don't need instructions from the brain to we don't need to have all the blood cells here to fix this wound. We can use some other stuff over there to fix the throat. So we don't need the instruction from the brain. We have this code, and if that code is coded value or the top things that matters most for us, we don't even have that at work right now. And that is something we need to bring back and delegate the power. Which brings me to the last challenge, is that in AI times, that something says we should delegate the decision-making VUCA style to where the action is happening, right? And these people, if they're not self-aware, they're not even system-aware. Well, you are in Navy SEALs because you practice for 20 years to go down and do these things. So, but we're not Navy SEALs. But if I understood what I'm doing in that context and what data means, would we really trust these people with that from above? Because we can't trust AI because they are really bad at context understanding. They don't take any damage. Right. They're not punished. They are not held accountable or anything. They just do what they thought was good. Forgetting a basic fact that you can't open a door if you're in a submarine. So it's or whatever.
Well, I think we'll hit a point where and I'm not the only one to say this, but that what we'll find with AI is it's a self-referencing feedback loop.
Yeah. And the quest of mediocrity.
and that's where we ended up before AI showed up. I think that's part of what as someone who has essentially worked outside of institutions, but worked for them throughout my career, what I have found is that that if you must take care of the institution, you must be able to help it change. And if it cannot change, it will slowly fade and then quickly die.
Yeah,
and I think that's where we are right now. But what gives me hope is what comes out of COVID, which is people are talking to each other and they're talking more intelligently. I mean, I see this just in the people I interview here, and they're becoming more focused on outcomes and more focused on where they spend their time, and I see that they're becoming much more aware of how never changing creates a cycle of deterioration in the systems, and so it's an interesting time to be alive.
Yes, honestly, I think it's fantastic, and I can't put the backpack on my shoulder and think I'm going to save the world. I read Noam Chomsky's old books, by the way. I like him as a linguistic. He has an opinion about geopolitics because he read the same news from 10 different languages or whatever he studied.
Right.
Now he can't speak, poor guy. But I was one interview with him. I read one of his books that he said, "So what do you think we're going to do about this? You've seen all this happening. Oh, forget about the story. I can't do anything." "Okay, but you have all this knowledge." "Yeah, but I can't do anything." "So what are we going to do?" "I don't know. Yeah, I'm just telling you what I see. If you like this, then you do just something. I can't. I go under if I have to do something. But if I can inspire you guys to say this is not okay, if this is another grassroots, that's if you accept it, well, that's your destiny. But I can't do anything about it. And that's what I can only influence the people I meet. And I have this 5-minute rule when it comes to hot fires. I'm out in the forest quite a lot or a while, so I want to make up a fire within 5 minutes. Because it gives you trust and feel confident. The same thing when I meet people. I want them to smile or laugh within 5 minutes. And if that's the only smile I had that day, it was a smile. Yeah. They were seeing and maybe they see someone else. But I know for sure that if I didn't smile to them, that would be one smile less. So that's how I can influence my time. And I like the way you say talk to each other, because I think that's the solution. We need to, but we also need some kind of guidelines, what you should talk about, right? If let's say the state said these are the top 100 topics we worry about as your leaders. So if you come up to something smart, you
but
can apply
here,
for money.
but here in my on my podcast, I've decided to make it an unscripted conversation.
Yeah,
So whatever, really, whatever the guest wants to talk about is what we talk about,
yeah.
and 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 I've found that that is what people want. So so give us a give us 2 sentences on what you do and how people can find you.
What I do, they can just connect to me and we can have a call. Costs nothing to talk to me. Give you 30 minutes, an hour. Most people are experienced, so just connect to me and we set up a call. No, I work in the complexity. They come to me when they know something is wrong, they, for whatever reason, as human beings or organizations, and clarify the challenges they have. Because I'm not a therapist, but I'm a certified coach. I'm a consultant, I'm an advisor. I'm a navigator of this complexity, I call myself. Why? Because I've done it my whole life. And my stupid me, I thought that's what everybody did. And I realized that after 30 years that, no, wait a minute, I'm a little unique here. So I feel confident in this uncertain terrain. I compare myself to Columbus because I'm a sailor, right? So, and I like navigation, I like math. So I like stories. I've been on stage, I'm flexible. I have courage. I've done stupid things. So I'm not going to do those again. And I've seen a lot of the world and different kinds of people. So I have a great big, I'm curious, I'm creative, compassionate, and courageous, I would say. So in the land of complexity, I can help clarify a little what you can do, not what's happening, but what you can do about it. So
That's good.
that's the most fluffy answer I can get. But I love to do what I'm doing. And the sad part is I talk more with people outside Sweden than in Sweden. Because here it's like you don't talk about these things because that lets go of the illusion that you have control. I don't know if it's shame or what
Yeah.
it is. So I wish people were able to be a little bit more vulnerable. There's a lot of stuff I don't know, but I know these things, what I'm doing. So check out my profile.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Thanks for
start somewhere. I saw you saw me my faithful impact loop, and it's not that hard. Just start somewhere. Stop doing things that are bad. That release time to focus on what's good. So take it inches by
well.
inches.
So here as we end, just send me what you would like for me to put in the show notes so that people
Yeah,
can find you, and send me a picture of you, and then who knows? I see this as a as an experiment in networking through introductions. People that that you think I should be interviewing, introduce me to them.
I will do
And
that. And I'm going to start my own pod actually soon.
good,
So yeah, I'm
good.
part of many pods, but I'm going to start my own pod. So I'm happy to invite you for that one.
I'd love that. I'd love that.
I
And I
thank you very much, Ed. This was such an honor to be
thank
out
you,
of nowhere invited to this. So.
and thank you all for watching. And I hope you have realized that you have a lot of complexity in your life that needs some, I don't know if it's simplification, but at least some addressing from a position of wisdom and morality. How about that?
That sounds great.
I love that. Okay.
Thank
See
you.
you next
Make a good.
time here on the
Thank
Eddie
you.
Nember podcast. Bye bye.